Okay, we'll call instruction committee meeting to order. First item is approval of minutes from last month.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Item 2 is 95% program. Heidi Zolman.
Hi, good evening. I'm not used to presenting in this room, so this is nice. So I'm going to sit, if that works. So I do have a slideshow. I did send some backup information, and then I just added a few extra slides. So if you want to look up there. Basically, we're always striving for that 90% reading goal. You know, in Rochester, I work with the reading specialist all the time, and we're always striving for that 90% reading goal. And then as we look at our K&1 data, I have Kyle flipping the slides here so that we can go to the next one. So, you know, we just saw this slide from last month, and we're always striving for that. Our kindergarten typically does very well. So the big idea in kindergarten is called phonological awareness and phonemic awareness, and we typically do very well with that. And then what we see is our first graders actually come in a little bit lower, so then we have to think about why. What can we do to kind of keep going with those kindergartners? And then once they get to first grade, the big idea in first grade is phonics. So we want to teach them how to read with phonics. So we know the consequences of reading difficulties, and Kyle, if you click one more, it'll show like this big gap. So a lot of times when I work with first grade teachers, I say, if we can close that gap in K&1, then we won't see this huge gap getting into 12th grade. Because I test a lot of these kids as they get into high school. So K&1 teachers have a huge job, and we want to get in there. We want to be the most precise we can and help them out as much as we can. So the next slide is just going over our tiered instruction. So we have our core instruction. We have a great reading program, Reading Street, and it does very well. And then we have Tier 2 and Tier 3. So all of the research that we've gone over for the past, 8 years, looking at first grade data, looking at K data, is really the research put into some nice a nice program called the 95% group. So the next slide kind of just goes over what that is, but basically our goal was last spring talking to Kyle and Mike and what are we going to do about this first grade? And I said I highly recommend this 95% group products. I've worked with the author. She's a letters trainer. She's nationally recognized. Dr. Susan Hall, and basically she's taken all of the research and put it into kind of simplified approaches. So basically it's helping our teachers in that core instruction, because that's kind of the meat and the potatoes of our instruction with our kids. So basically in kindergarten we help our kids get to the phonological awareness continuum. So we're basically taking them to like skills 3 and 4. But the research is now saying that we have to keep going with them to get them ready for first grade. So we're getting new evidence on reading, and we know that we have to keep going with them. So all of our kindergarten teachers have this phonological awareness kit, and School Street actually implemented this last year, and we know the results that we are seeing immediately in K&1. It shows through the data. So the kits were pretty cheap. And they have, I think the next slide goes over some of what the lesson plan. So it's not like a huge kit, a lot of money. They were pretty cheap, and Mr. Hopkins allowed us to order these for our K&1 teachers with the budget, which was amazing. They were very excited, and our teachers are very excited to get these in their hands. So the next slide is basically what the teachers see. So they're just very simplified lessons. Things just stand out for them. So while they're doing their core instruction, they can pull up a group. Everything's right there for them. They don't have to print it off, the internet. They don't have to laminate it. Everything is right there for them for their instruction. And it's very explicit. In the next slide, so it's very teacher friendly. Another part of the research we now know is that blending is huge. So, you know, we go from that stage of phonological awareness to reading, all of a sudden in first grade, right? So if we can actually pinpoint where these kids are on their blending continuum, we call it, so some kids will say like at, and some kids will just say cat. So we can actually test them and figure out where they are, and then we can give them more instruction. We use this blending kit that we also ordered. We ordered that for K teachers as well, because we know that the kindergarten teachers can actually go in and do some of this stuff before they come to first grade. So that's exciting. We're excited to see that. So you can click to the next one, Kyle. Another thing is that we had all of our grade 1 teachers. I had them in a room last spring. We took every kid in their classroom and kind of pinpointed where they are on this continuum. And it was just eye-opening for them to say, wow, you know, I need to get these kids here, and they're here. So we're going to actually meet with them in a couple of weeks and do something similar. So these continuums are really all evidence-based, and they help the teachers know where the kids are going. And then the next slide, so we ordered 3 kits for the first grade. So basically, we have a basic kit, an advanced kit, and a multi-syllable kit. So we're able to actually pinpoint exactly where the kids are in this phonics continuum and meet them where they are. So it's more personalized for these kids. So the teachers will have all of these lessons, all of these materials for these kits, and they work in conjunction with the Reading Street core reading instruction. So I've actually been going into first grade classrooms and saying, hey, how about we add this to your instructions? So we're seeing kids get excited about it. Lots of hands-on things, so I have lots of samples and things like that, but the kids all have different colors for the different phonics skills, and the teachers have everything right there for them. And the next slide is basically, we set up a reading training on October 4th for all of our first grade teachers to come in this room. We have a consultant that is helping us, and they are going to bring their kits and get into this. They're going to look at their data. So we're pretty excited to get this into the schools. And we're already starting, like again, School Street has already started. This is one of their books. I had to go get it from them, but they're in full swing with this stuff, so it's good. So any questions?
Yeah, so thank you for sharing this. I saw it a lot, in all the metrics, the school report card slides were showing this. I had no idea what it was. So, and the concept of it is fantastic too, because you're going after the kids right from the day they walk through the door. And obviously your graph showed what I figured, which is if you fall behind at the beginning, catching up is a problem. So the question I had for you was, this program, is it something that every kid in kindergarten and first grade will go through this program? So it's not targeted to
right, so we can use it in many different ways. So we can use it in the core instruction, and then also the interventionist or reading specialist can also take it with different kids. So it can be used in both. But our main focus was core instruction. We want to get this in the hands of the classroom teachers. So they're pretty excited. And we had, I think Chamberlain actually ordered, it goes K to 12, so they actually ordered some for their upper grades as well, for syllable types and things like that. So I'm excited to see that too, how that works.
And how does it mesh with like Reading Street or something like that?
It does mesh with core instruction. So the author of this program wrote a book called I've Dibbled, Now What? And she's a letters trainer. So it's basically all of the research that we know, and then they highly recommend Reading Street and some other big core programs. But they're supposed to be used with a core program.
Okay,
And so we already have that. So we already have like the critical thinking going on in the core, and the complex text and all that kind of stuff. And our teachers basically said, we love this OG instruction. It's very systematic, and it's hard to train every single K through 5 teacher on OG. So basically, this is OG put into classroom teachers' hands. So it's kind of the same scope and sequence, it's explicit in instruction. So it's good. And we actually have some classroom teachers signed up for OG this year, so that'll just make this, much easier for them.
Thanks, so it's pre-OG as well.
It is.
All right, thank you.
Yes.
Any questions or comments? No? All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Third item is debrief August inspection committee meetings.
So we had some questions after you had an opportunity to see their inspection meetings, elementary and middle high school. Some questions that have come in, and so we put all of these, they're in a Google Doc in your drive and in front of you. You can look at these. You've probably had a chance to look at the questions that are already out there. You might have other questions. And then what we'd like to do is be able to get these questions in the hands of the principals and invite them back to the October and November meetings so that they can have more time with you one-on-one to answer some of your questions. So you have the start of the document. You can add to it. If you want to make notes on it, you can take some questions out, highlight the ones that you definitely want to focus on, and we'd like to get them, if we can get them in, I think the first 4 schools that we have are the 4 elementary schools and then high school.
Yep, and I think we asked by October 4th that you complete the questions so that we can then give those
So they have a couple
to the
weeks.
principals to ready all the information.
So that would be, help me with the alphabet. What do we have first?
Chamberlain, East Rochester,
Gonick,
and
Maple,
Maple, and high school.
and the high school. And then the rest of this. So if you can get those questions done first, we can get those out to them, and then we can get the second set of questions out to the second group.
Any questions or comments on that?
I guess just, because I, at least in my case, I submitted some stuff, and I see a lot of it here, but the core of it was the questions at the top, which were more responses to large swings in data, whether they be good or be a positive direction or negative direction. So do you want me to look into the build on that in some way?
If you have, so we tried to include, anytime we went through the data and anytime there was a shift that was, 17% or higher, because 20%, there was quite a few that was 20, but there were some that were just under that, so we didn't want to miss those. Heidi and I actually went through it together and calculated those. So we tried to include all of those. If there's any that we missed, or if there's other clarifying questions that would be more helpful, if you want to just add those
So just like the
in,
sanity check this?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
that would be great. Anything that you want to add, or if there's something that's in there that you just feel like, you know what, this question has been answered now, it's not really important anymore for me. So, yep, just go ahead and put those right in, that'd be great.
All right, that's cool, and I'm personally, from my perspective, I'm flexible on what that cutoff number ought to be. It's more the process
Yep.
than any specific.
And if it was out of the ordinary for that school, even if it was, it might not have been 17%, it might have been 12, but everything else was right around 1 or 2, that's significant for that school, so we try to include those
Yeah.
as well.
Well, and it's cool stuff like you brought up School Street, right?
Yes.
School Street's still in first grade reading, both up this year. It's not necessarily a huge change, but it's a positive change
Right.
that we did something very specific to go after.
And what was it that we did? And we actually, when we were doing that, Jen was in the office.
Oh, she was, yes.
So we called her right in, and we're like, what did you do here? So it was great. It was great conversations for us to have, so it'll be great conversation for you to have with the principals as well.
Thank you.
Anything else on that? Okay. Item 4 is field trips. Any questions on those? Any public comment? Any other? We have
We have one
Justin
other.
Roy with Haven Program.
I gave you a quick synopsis on the front. This is a suicide prevention program done through Haven, and it used to be SAS, so they've been around 30 years doing programs in the schools. They've done programming in our elementary schools, they've done programs in our middle schools, so this isn't new. But we absolutely need to be addressing the mental health issues that we're seeing in the schools, definitely. And so this is a start, and all our freshmen will get it. And because they all have math first semester, every freshman, that's where we're gonna hit them in the math classes. So it's 2 90-minute blocks. And the letter explains, part of the curriculum that we'll be sending home. But one of the things I want to make sure that you understand is we'll have a school counselor in every classroom in case it sparks some students needing additional supports. I sent a letter to you, I think, through Sandy, but we tweaked this a little more because we wanted an opt-out for parents. So we added a line saying if you want to opt out, to contact the school counselor, and then they can have a conversation of why they're opting their kid out of this, and then hopefully they'll convince the parent that this is important. So, are there any questions?
It's a hard topic.
It's
It
a very
is,
hard
and
topic.
it's not that it happens in math. Math isn't a trigger for mental health issues, right?
Well,
I resent
It
it
is
for
for me.
math class.
I know it is for a lot of people, but.
I mean, I think, the math class aside, people look to the schools and say, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? And we're not trained professionals to deal with suicide. So I think this is a great step in the right direction for self-care. And they talk a lot about handling what life throws at you, the ACEs that we call. And so they talk about how do you can't change the ACEs, but how do you work with those ACEs so that you feel successful, and what are the coping strategies?
So I support this. I'm just thinking parents that may not, saying 2 90-minute sessions, so that's gonna affect,
Mhm.
2 90-minute sessions of like what math, like how are you going? to
We'll have an
address
alternate
that?
math activity for parents. It'll be through Edgenuity, a tool that we use, and they'll be able to go to the library. I asked that same question when we had our planning meeting, and they say through all the schools, very, very, very few people opt out.
Yeah.
They've had just a handful this year so far, so we're hoping parents won't opt out. But if they do, and if they're upset about the 90 minutes of math, we certainly can address that, yeah.
Some of the flexible content that you're doing at the school,
Yep.
it can you can catch up.
Yep,
That
there's,
time can be caught up pretty quickly.
yep,
Well,
playlists.
And again, I 100%
Yeah.
support this. I think it's needed. I'm just looking at a parent saying, you're taking away from my math academics, so I just
Mhm.
want to make sure that, and I assumed you had already planned ahead of it. I just wanted to
We
make
did,
sure
I
that
mean,
you were
but
aware
our
of
whole
that.
day is academics, so it's gotta come
Right.
somewhere. Our whole day, we don't have recess, we don't have wiggle room that we can use. They get a
Yeah.
30-minute lunch, and then they have 4 academic blocks, so,
And they all get math, so
Right.
again, I think this is a great thought-out plan. I just wanted to make sure that
yep.
we had addressed that in case.
With Sarah and then Nate.
They don't all have English class?
No, English, no,
No.
that's either first or second semester.
Gotcha. Yeah, thanks.
Have you talked to Haven to see if they'd be willing to do a parent night for those who are apprehensive?
So that comes with this program, so we just have to figure out when they're able to come and do it. And they're also gonna come and do a 90-minute session with our faculty at our next teacher workshop.
That actually dovetails with the new law.
Yep,
That
right.
actually doesn't go into effect until July 1, but out ahead of it is really great.
Can you let us know when that is? I'm just.
For the parents?
For the staff.
The
and
staff,
I'm
November
interested
5th.
And you'll send a letter to parents as well, I would assume.
Yeah, once we figure out when the night will be. It usually happens after all the sessions are done. So we're probably looking at doing the night the same time as the faculty, probably early November.
Great.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Justin.
Anything else on the item? A motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We're adjourned.